September 5, 2025. Washington shocks the world. In a fiery speech, Donald Trump announces that the Pentagon will no longer be called the Department of Defense. From this day forward, it will be known by its old name, the Department of War. The message is clear. America will no longer hide behind defensive language. The United States is once again a nation that wages war to protect its interests. Allies cheer, adversaries seethe. And in Tehran, Iran's leadership sees opportunity. Because less than 24 hours later, in the Red Sea, a disguised U.S. warship steaming toward the Pacific is about to be hit by the most dangerous missile strike of the decade. This is not history. This is a Navy warfare simulation, where today's headlines become tomorrow's battlefield. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and smash the like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was Trump right to rename the Pentagon back to the Department of War? And remember, by becoming a sponsor of this channel, you not only keep Navy warfare alive, you also help provide real support for Ukrainian soldiers and civilians suffering from Russian missile strikes. Now let's go to sea. The USS Mason, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, was moving quietly through the southern Red Sea on the morning of September 6th. Outwardly, the ship looked like just another gray escort shepherding tankers toward the Gulf of Aden. But beneath the camouflage and the diplomatic cover story lay a different mission. The Mason wasn't heading to the Middle East at all. It was part of a shadow deployment ordered by Trump himself, a movement of naval assets eastward toward the Pacific to counter Chinese influence around Taiwan. Its orders: transit silently, avoid escalation, and reach Diego Garcia to rendezvous with reinforcements. But Iran knew. Satellite feeds, informants on the ground, and their own Revolutionary Guard fast boats had tracked the Mason for days. And now, on the very morning after Trump declared America's Department of War, Tehran prepared its response. At 09:42 local time, Iranian launch crews in western Yemen raised their missile tubes. The weapon, the Fateh 3-3, a short-range ballistic missile upgraded with precision guidance. Its target, the Mason. On board the destroyer, sailors were drinking coffee and running standard watch rotations when the alarm sounded. Inbound! Inbound! The Combat Information Center lit up red. Aegis radars locked on, but the launch had been close, less than 200 kilometers. The intercept window was seconds. Vampire inbound, prepare to engage! The captain's voice boomed through the ship. At 09:46, the Mason launched its first SM-6 interceptor. A column of fire roared skyward, meeting the Fateh in mid-arc. The sky flashed white as the two collided, but the victory was short. A second missile screamed over the horizon. This one punched through the defensive net, slamming into the sea just 80 yards from the destroyer's hull. The explosion ripped across the deck, knocking sailors off their feet and blowing antennas clean off the superstructure. The ship survived, but the message was unmistakable. Iran had just fired on a U.S. Navy warship the morning after Trump renamed the Pentagon to the Department of War. If you're watching this, let us know in the comments. Did Iran just test America's will, or did Trump's move provoke this strike? And don't forget, subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss these frontline simulations. Become a sponsor. Today, your support fuels Navy warfare and helps Ukrainian soldiers and civilians hit by Russian missiles. The strike on the USS Mason was just the beginning. By late morning on September 6th, Iranian commanders had decided to escalate. If America wanted to bring back the Department of War, Tehran would show the world that Iran was ready to meet war with war. At 10:30 local time, satellite feeds caught the movement. Convoys of trucks emerging from caves in western Yemen and southern Iran. Missile tubes tilted skyward, hatches opened, crews scrambled. This wasn't one launch, it was a barrage. At 10:42, the first volley rose. 4 Fateh 110 ballistic missiles, guided and deadly, arced toward the Mason's convoy. Almost simultaneously, another wave of Shahed 136 kamikaze drones swarmed off makeshift coastal launchers, dozens of them buzzing low over the water. The air was suddenly filled with targets. On board the Mason, chaos erupted. Combat Information Center screamed with overlapping alarms. Multiple inbound tracks, vampires inbound, drones inbound. The Aegis radar painted the sky red. Sailors rushed to battle stations. At 10:44, the ship's CIWS phalanx cannons came alive, spewing hundreds of rounds per second into the air. Explosions dotted the horizon as drones shattered into flaming debris, falling into the waves. Still, the swarm kept coming. "Engage! Engage!" the captain barked. SM-2 interceptors streaked into the sky, knocking down ballistic missiles one after another. 2 were destroyed mid-flight. A third slipped through, slamming into the sea near a civilian tanker in the convoy. The shockwaves split containers, sending crude oil spilling across the surface. And then, the worst happened. At 10:49, one Shahed made it through. It smashed into the Mason's aft section, detonating against the helicopter deck. Fire ripped across the stern, black smoke billowing into the sky. Sailors scrambled with hoses, fighting to keep the blaze from reaching the ship's missile cells. One wrong spark, and the Mason would explode from within. The attack lasted just 12 minutes, but in that time, the U.S. destroyer had fired nearly every interceptor in its forward launch cells. The ship was alive, but bleeding, shaken, and nearly out of defensive missiles. Washington's response was immediate. President Donald Trump went live on national television, his tone raw and furious. Iran has made a grave mistake. They have attacked a United States warship in international waters. This was not defense. This was aggression, and America will answer with overwhelming force. In Tehran, Ayatollah Khamenei called the attack a defensive strike against American aggression and vowed more. Iranian state TV broadcast triumphant footage of the missile launches, declaring it the day America's shield cracked. For the sailors still fighting fires on the Mason's deck, there was no triumph. There was only survival. Blood stained the steel, smoke choked the air, and across the radio they heard what came next. Iranian launchers were preparing a second wave. The Red Sea was about to turn into a battlefield of fire and steel. What do you think? Did Trump's renaming of the Pentagon into the Department of War provoke this barrage, or was Iran waiting for an excuse? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and tap the bell so you never miss these frontline war simulations. By becoming a sponsor, you're not just supporting Navy warfare. You're also helping provide aid to Ukrainian soldiers and civilians suffering under Russian missile strikes. The barrage had begun, but the counterstrike was coming. By the afternoon of September 6, 2025, the USS Mason was still afloat, scarred, burning, but alive. Its decks were blackened, its CIWS barrels overheated, and its crew exhausted. Dozens of sailors were injured, at least 4 dead. The Iranian barrage had been brutal, but it hadn't sunk the ship, and now the United States was ready to strike back. At 14 WAR local time, Central Command issued the order, neutralize Iranian launch capacity, full spectrum response authorized. Minutes later, the sea and sky exploded with American firepower. From beneath the waves, a Virginia-class submarine lurking in the Arabian Sea fired its first salvo of Tomahawk cruise missiles. The missiles skimmed low over the desert, each one hunting Iranian launchers and radar stations. Satellite imagery captured the impacts. Fireballs blooming across Yemeni launch pads, missile convoys shredded, control bunkers reduced to smoking craters. From the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, FA-18 Super Hornets roared off the deck, armed with precision JDAM bombs and AGM-88 HARM missiles. Their target, Iran's air defense network along the Red Sea coast. At 15:12, the first HARM streaked down, frying radars in bursts of white static. Within minutes, Iran's eyes on the coast went dark. But the Americans weren't finished. From Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, B-1B Lancer bombers took off heavy with long-range cruise missiles. At 16 Irusal, they reached launch range. Dozens of JASSM-ER missiles poured out of their bays, hitting Iranian drone factories and logistics hubs deep inland. The very facilities building the Shahed swarms that terrorized the Mason were now burning rubble. The response was overwhelming, and it was deliberate. This wasn't tit for tat. This was punishment. On the Mason, sailors cheered when they heard the tomahawks roar overhead. Morale surged as radio reports confirmed Iranian sites destroyed one after another. For the first time since dawn, it felt like the U.S. Navy had seized the initiative. In Washington, Donald Trump delivered another address. This morning, Iran attacked an American warship. This afternoon, America destroyed the launchers that fired those missiles. Tonight, we will continue until Iran understands one truth. If you strike the United States, you will pay a price you cannot afford. In Tehran, state TV called the U.S. strikes terrorism, but behind closed doors, commanders knew the damage was severe. Nearly half of the mobile missile launchers in Yemen were destroyed. Drone assembly lines in Esfahan were reduced to twisted steel. Supply lines to Houthi allies were cut off. Still, Iran refused to back down. Hours later, Revolutionary Guard commanders vowed to expand the war, threatening strikes on U.S. bases in Bahrain and Qatar. For every American missile launched, Tehran promised 2 more in return. And so the stage was set for the next escalation. The Mason had survived. America had counterpunched. But Iran was preparing to throw everything it had. The Red Sea was no longer a contested waterway. It was a battlefield where regional war could ignite at any second. What do you think? Was America's counterstrike justified, or did it risk turning a clash into a regional war? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, smash the like button, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next episode of Navy Warfare. And remember, by becoming a sponsor, you're directly supporting this channel and helping us deliver aid to Ukrainian soldiers and civilians hit by Russian missile strikes. The counterstrike had been unleashed, but the question remained: would Iran escalate again, or had America's message landed? By the evening of September 6, 2025, the Red Sea was ablaze. Iranian launchers lay in ruins, drone factories burned, and yet Tehran was not finished. For the Revolutionary Guard, America's counterstrike was not deterrence. It was provocation. And they were determined to prove that Iran could still strike back. At 19 Warhammer local time, satellites tracked convoys moving deeper into the Iranian interior. What emerged were longer-range systems, Zulfiqar and Desful ballistic missiles, capable of reaching U.S. bases in the Gulf. Their targets were no longer just destroyers or convoys. They were airfields, depots, and the very infrastructure of American power projection. At 1947, the launch order was given. Dozens of missiles roared skyward from central Iran, climbing into the night. Their arcs pointed toward Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and Naval Support Activity Bahrain, the hubs of U.S. presence in the region. At the same time, swarms of Shahed drones lifted from Houthi-held Yemen, aimed at U.S. ships still guarding the Red Sea. The response was chaos. Al Udeid's Patriot batteries spat interceptors into the sky. Fiery blossoms dotted the darkness as incoming warheads were shredded mid-air. Still, some slipped through. A missile slammed into a fuel depot on base, sending a fireball hundreds of feet into the air. Another struck near the runways, cratering asphalt and grounding flights for hours. In Bahrain, 2 missiles struck just outside the naval base, rocking the city and shattering windows across neighborhoods. Sirens blared as civilians fled into shelters. The U.S. Navy raised its alert level to maximum, bracing for more. On the Red Sea, the nightmare repeated. Iranian drones descended in waves on the battered convoy. USS Carney and its escorts fired until their magazines were nearly dry. Dozens of drones were destroyed, but not all. One Shahed struck a Liberian-flagged tanker dead center, igniting a fire that burned uncontrollably through the night. By dawn on September 7th, the toll was staggering. Hundreds of civilian casualties across the Gulf, dozens of sailors injured, millions of barrels of oil disrupted. The Red Sea was no longer a shipping lane. It was a graveyard of twisted steel and burning wreckage. And yet, the wider danger was clear. Regional powers were now bracing for escalation. Saudi Arabia activated its air defenses. Israel positioned its Arrow interceptors. Egypt mobilized its navy around the Suez Canal. Everyone feared the same outcome, that a clash between the U.S. and Iran in the Red Sea could spiral into a regional war stretching from the Gulf to the Mediterranean. In Washington, President Donald Trump declared, "The United States will not retreat. Iran has attacked our ships, our bases, and our allies. We will strike back, and we will win. This is the Department of War, and America is ready." In Tehran, Ayatollah Khamenei answered with defiance. "If America wants war, Iran will give it war. The Red Sea will be their grave." The world held its breath. Was this the start of another limited exchange, or the beginning of a full-scale Middle East war? What do you think? Did Iran's escalation force America's hand into a regional conflict, or should the US have stopped after the first counterstrike? Drop your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, smash the like button, and tap the bell so you never miss our frontline simulations. By becoming a sponsor, you're not only supporting Navy warfare, you're also helping provide real aid to Ukrainian soldiers and civilians suffering from Russian missile strikes. Your support matters here, and on the front lines. The Red Sea showdown of September 2025 ended without a clear victor, but with one undeniable truth: the Middle East was one step away from total war, and the world was watching.